Thomas Jefferson, a founding father, a writer, and a president, but also a man full of contradictions. He wrote about freedom, yet owned hundreds of enslaved people. He championed democracy, yet feared the chaos of the people's rule. He shaped America's identity, yet left behind a legacy that still sparks debate today. Who was the real Thomas Jefferson? And what don't they teach you in school about him? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see Jefferson in a way most history books never show, and you might just change the way you think about one of America's most famous presidents. A young mind, shaped by books and curiosity. Thomas Jefferson was born on April 13, 1743, in Shadwell, Virginia, to a wealthy plantation family. His father, in truth, was Peter Jefferson, a self-made man, a surveyor, a map maker, as well as a planter. His mother, however, Jane Randolph, came from a highly off society group in Virginia. Thomas Jefferson was talented from the outset, but Jefferson wasn't a typical boy for his era. He was taciturn, extremely inquisitive, and, first and foremost, a knowledge-hungry person. He was teaching himself Latin and Greek by the age of 9. At the age of 16, he had mastered several languages and was fluent in them. When he enrolled at the College of William and Mary, he was already reading many books as if he had lived a whole lifetime at the tender age of 17. He wasn't simply a reader, though. Jefferson had an ardent passion for music. The majority of his time was given to playing the violin, and he strongly believed that it helped him to be sharp. Also, he didn't blindly accept conservative ideas. He was putting them to the test. He was absorbed by the ideas of people of the Enlightenment, such as John Locke and Voltaire, whose ideas on freedom and government were to mold his own beliefs. While in college, he studied law under George Wythe, who was one of the greatest legal minds in the colonies. And along the way, his passion for politics grew more profound. From lawyer to revolutionary leader. By the 1760s, the American colonies were becoming very upset because of British rule. The British government had incurred a large expenditure during the French and Indian War from 1754 to 1763, and now wanted the American colonies to help pay the debt. Taxes, trade restrictions, and the lack of representation in Parliament were the key reasons why colonists were unhappy. The Stamp Act of 1765, which taxed everything from newspapers to playing cards, was particularly infuriating to colonists. The British repealed it after the protests, but they later imposed more taxes, most notably the Tea Act of 1773, which led to the Boston Tea Party. Jefferson, who was still a young lawyer in Virginia, observed the buildup of tensions. Unlike Patrick Henry, a firebrand orator, Jefferson was not the kind of person to organize a protest in the streets or deliver rhetorical and dramatic speeches. He was reserved, exacting, and more comfortable putting his thoughts in writing than engaging in public confrontations. But his pen was as powerful as any musket. In 1774, Jefferson composed a summary view of the rights of British America, a small book that put forward a radical argument. The American colonies were not merely subjects of the British Crown. They were independent in every respect except in name. He argued that the king had no right to rule over them without their consent. It was a bold and dangerous idea at the time, drawing the attention of revolutionaries throughout the colonies. Even British officials took notice, and Jefferson was nearly arrested for sedition. The summary view was, in fact, written by Jefferson as an instruction manual for the Virginia delegates to the First Continental Congress. Yet, far from being a local affair, the document appeared in newspapers and was distributed across the colonies. It was one of the first clear demands for American independence, forming the basis of the arguments he would later perfect in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence. Imagine this. You are 33 years old. The life of a whole country is on your shoulders. You are alone, sitting in a Philadelphia room you rented for the summer, which is your only possession. Maybe a quill and ink as well, along with a vision that might make you a traitor sentenced to execution. This was Jefferson in June 1776. It was during the 17 days he spent composing the document that changed the course of history. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. These words are still very much relevant to this day, but only a few people knew that Jefferson's original draft was even more radical. He had included a paragraph in which the British king was criticized for the slave trade as a cruel war against human nature. Southerners would not sign unless the paragraph was omitted. as they were profiting from slavery. Jefferson removed it, but with regret. That decision, whether by necessity or compromise, would haunt his legacy forever. Ambassador, Secretary of State, and the clash with Hamilton. While Jefferson's direct involvement in the war was limited, he played a crucial role in shaping the new nation's ideals. As a legislator, he worked on reforms in Virginia, including efforts to separate church and state. However, his tenure as governor of Virginia during the later years of the war proved challenging, especially during British invasions. After the war, he was appointed U.S. Minister to France, immersing himself in diplomacy at a critical moment in global history. While he was in France, he witnessed the early stages of the French Revolution and mingled with European intellectuals. Although he was captivated by France, he also saw the other side of the coin, the fall of mob rule, violence, and chaos. All of that combined led him to the conclusion that democracy is lost without structure, which in turn brings about anarchy. Washington, who was president at the time, asked Jefferson to help him as the first Secretary of State when he returned to the U.S. However, his perspective on the future of America conflicted with that of Alexander Hamilton, Washington's right-hand man and Treasury Secretary. Hamilton aimed for a powerful federal government, a national bank, and an economy that relied on manufacturing. In contrast, Jefferson wanted the government to have limitations, states to have more rights, and a nation where individual farmers could thrive. This clash was so intense that it led to the creation of the first opposing political parties in America, Hamilton's Federalists and Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. In 1796, Thomas Jefferson was nominated for the position of Vice President of the U.S., and together with John Adams, they managed to carry out their duties. However, it wasn't without conflict between them. In 1800, for the first time, Jefferson became president, having defeated Adams in the election. Subsequently, it marked the first peaceful transfer of power between two political rivals in the history of the United States. The Jefferson Presidency. Jefferson's presidential term was marked by the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, which was his most significant success. The accomplishment of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 was the greatest among them. For only $15 million, the size of the United States was doubled, expanding from the initial 828,000 square miles by acquiring land from France. Although the purchase was somewhat controversial, as the Constitution did not explicitly state whether the president had the authority to buy land, Jefferson was always a staunch reader of the law. In the end, however, he decided that the opportunity was too valuable to pass up. Thomas Jefferson also sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on a bold mission to explore the West, map new territories, and build relations with Native American tribes. It became one of the most remarkable explorations in U.S. history. However, not all of Jefferson's decisions were welcomed by the public. In 1807, he enacted the Embargo Act, a measure that prohibited all commercial exchanges with Britain and France to keep the U.S. out of their war. As a result, it wrecked the American economy. Farmers were unable to sell their crops, merchants lost their money, and unemployment rates soared. It was a disaster, and Jefferson had no choice but to repeal the act before he left office. While Jefferson is popular for his presidency, his role in the public health sector is also exemplary. In the 19th century, the smallpox breakout was devastating. Vaccination was still new and controversial, but Jefferson, always a man of science, believed in it. In 1800, just before becoming president, he made sure his family and close friends at Monticello got vaccinated. This made him one of the first American leaders to support the practice. As president, he helped distribute the vaccine to Native American tribes. He saw it as both a way to save lives and improve relations with indigenous nations. Jefferson's trust in science shaped his leadership. Long before public health was a government priority, he showed that true leadership means protecting people, not just making policies. Retirement, Monticello, and a complicated legacy. One of Jefferson's most outstanding works is the University of Virginia, which he founded. It was a different kind of university compared to others at the time, as it was not dominated by religion. He imagined a place where students could feel at ease while also learning about various scientific, philosophical, and political subjects, free from church indoctrination. He was not only the architect of the campus buildings, but also the one who handpicked the faculty and selected books for the library. Jefferson believed that education helped safeguard democracy. He once stated, "An educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people." Although Jefferson championed these core values, his personal life was far from unchallenged. He was a profound thinker on liberty and the rights of man, yet he enslaved over 600 people during his lifetime. Moreover, he was also the master of Sally Hemings, a woman who, through DNA testing, has been scientifically confirmed to have had several children fathered by him. Related to Martha, Hemings was, in fact, the half-sister of Jefferson's late wife, which made the case even more complicated. She was only a young woman when their relationship is thought to have begun. She had no real rights or freedom as Martha had, and was just a teenager at the time. This raises a difficult historical dilemma about the man who wrote, "All men are created equal." How could Jefferson champion individual rights while living in a society that denied them to so many? After all, protecting rights is a fundamental principle of any true democracy. The Final Days and an Unforgettable Coincidence. On July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed, Jefferson passed away at Monticello. In a strange twist of fate, his old rival-turned-friend, John Adams, died just hours later. Adams' final words? "Thomas Jefferson still survives." He didn't know that Jefferson had already taken his last breath. So, who was Thomas Jefferson? A visionary? A hypocrite? A genius? A flawed man caught in the contradictions of his time? The truth is, he was all of those things. His words shaped America, his actions expanded it, and his contradictions still challenge us today. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And, want to see more videos about US presidents? Tell us which one in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.